Guys, let's talk about Mexico. Often seen as the underdog lying just south of the US, but don't let that fool you. This place is the 13th largest country globally and rocks the second largest economy in Latin America. And guess what? Its proximity to the US isn't just for postcard sunsets. It's turning into a massive strategic win, pumping up its economic growth like never before. And now, let's go ahead and zero in on the facts. Mexico and the United States are like conjoined twins, with a whopping 1,954-kilometer border, 54 bustling border crossings, and not one, not two, but 4 time zones. This creates a powerhouse of trade opportunities that's proving to be a jackpot for both, but especially Mexico. Now go ahead and take a peek at this map. It's a colorful splash showing the GDP per capita across Mexico's 31 states. Do you notice something? The economic mojo is buzzing mainly in the northern regions that cozy up right next to the US. These areas aren't just exporting goods left and right, they're also less hooked on commodities compared to their southern neighbors. And guess what? This economic fiesta is likely to samba its way across the entire country soon. Fast forward to 2023, and we've seen the southern stars like Oaxaca and Tabasco not just grow, but practically explode with economic activity. This boom, my friends, is all thanks to a nifty trend called nearshoring. And I know that might sound a little weird, but let's go ahead and talk about it. That's when companies pack up closer to home, and it's making Mexico the new it spot for businesses relocating from further afield. With global giants from America, Europe, and Asia shifting their operations to Mexico, the country's seen a flood of foreign investment. 2023 alone spiked with an 18% growth compared to the previous year. Despite the hurdles of global tension and trade tiffs making manufacturing in China a bit of a headache for many Western companies, Mexico has swooped in as a dazzling alternative. By February 2024, Mexico had even sprinted past China, becoming the top dog for U.S. imports. This has pumped up its economic growth, placing Mexico among the G20's fastest-growing economies in 2023, with wages climbing at record speeds. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Mexico's wrestling with some tough stuff. Inequality is a big deal, and a big chunk of the wealth is held by just a couple of people. About 1/3 of the population is checking the living in poverty box, which, let's face it, isn't where you want to be if you're aiming for rich country status. And yeah, let's also talk about the elephant in the room, because we know you're all thinking about it: the drug cartels. While they do stir up a significant chunk of the unofficial economy, that's a story for another day. So as we zoom out, let's not miss the forest for the trees. Mexico's no longer just about beautiful beaches and tasty tacos. From silver mines to oil fields like Cerro Azul, discovered back in 1916, which, by the way, was a total game changer, pumping out about 260,000 barrels a day at its peak, which is a lot, right? Mexico is still gearing up. This was the game changer that catapulted Mexico into the big leagues of global oil producers. But here's the thing, the plot thickens. Exporting this black gold turned into a cash cow for the nation, especially when oil prices were sky high. However, not everyone was thrilled about foreign companies tapping into Mexico's lucrative oil wells, leading to a dramatic twist. The Mexican government took control of the industry. In 1938, Pemex was born, a state-owned colossus in charge of all things oil and gas, from drilling to dollars. This move wasn't just about national pride. Pemex's revenues were a financial lifeline, accounting for a hefty 30 to 40% of the government's total income. That's a lot. Fast forward to the late 1920s and 1930s, following the global Great Depression, and Mexico's economy was gearing up for a miraculous transformation. The stage was set for the Mexican economic miracle of the mid-20th century. Cities swelled with new workers, factories hummed, farms took a back seat, and classrooms filled up as more Mexicans learned to read and write. From 1950 to 1981, Mexico's economy grew at an impressive annual rate of 6.5%, and the quality of life improved significantly thanks to government investments in healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Just when you thought things couldn't get any better, 1977 brought another oil field discovery, boosting Mexico's proven reserves by a whopping 151%. The government went on a spending spree, achieving a landmark. For the first time, every child could attend preschool. But as the 80s rolled around, the oil-fueled party came to an abrupt halt. Oil prices plummeted due to a global surplus, export revenues tanked, and Mexico found itself grappling with a massive public deficit of 17.6%. The economic hangover was brutal. In 1982, unable to meet its debt obligations, Mexico defaulted on its loans, spiraling into a decade of economic stagnation known as the Lost Decade, characterized by inflation and sluggish growth. However, the tale takes a hopeful turn in the late 90s and early 2000s as rising oil prices during the commodity supercycle breathed a new life into Mexico's economy, setting the stage for a rebound. Today, oil still packs a punch in Mexico's economic ring, making up about 20% of government revenues, and that's quite a bit. But here's where things started to change. Mexico's been trying to shake off its oil-heavy rep since the 90s, looking to diversify like a pro. Enter NAFTA in 1994, teaming up Mexico with the US and Canada for some free trade magic. This deal was a game-changer, cutting down tariffs and opening doors for businesses across borders. And boy, did it work! Mexico's exports boomed, more than doubling as a share of GDP from 1994 to 2021, and the value of exports ballooned to a whopping $465 billion. That's billion with a B. That's not just growth, that's enormous growth. With NAFTA, not only did exports take off like a rocket, but Mexico also got to stash some serious cash in foreign exchange reserves, thanks to those juicy trade surpluses. This helped slim down the old government debt. Plus, the cherry on top, a tidal wave of foreign investment, especially in the manufacturing sector, thanks to Mexico's cozy spot next to the world's largest economy. American companies couldn't resist hopping over the border to set up shop, tapping into lower cost and pumping up job creation big time. But these new gigs weren't just any jobs. They were better, higher-skilled positions that had folks rushing for more education and training. Imagine that! Jobs that come with perks like job security and pensions, something that was just a dream for many before. So as Mexico continues to evolve, it's clear the nation's got its groove back, turning past economic woes into a launchpad for a booming, diverse future. Now that's what you call a comeback. But let's go ahead and widen the lens a little bit. It's not just US companies getting in on the nearshoring party. European and Chinese firms are also diving into Mexico. With trade wars heating up and shipping costs soaring, Chinese businesses in particular are shelling out big bucks to keep their stake in the US market safe. And in 2023, a ton of that cash was from companies doubling down on their Mexican operations, hinting that this nearshoring wave is just getting started. Thanks to the USMCA, goods that are 75% made in North America dodge tariffs. Cue the boom in assembly plant stamping made in Mexico on products from cars to computers. This influx of investments isn't just good news for the job market. It's a full-blown economic multiplier, pouring money into everything from roads to Wi-Fi networks. Yet, despite this optimism, there's a cloud hanging over Mexico's economic parade. From 1980 to 2019, Mexico's real GDP per capita growth crept up by just 0.7% annually, which is pretty paltry compared to Chile's 3% or South Korea's 5.3%. Now, what was the culprit behind that? Well, it turns out it was stagnant productivity. While the workforce has ballooned, efficiency in how these resources are used hasn't really seen much of a bump. And here's another consideration. This labor force surge won't last forever. With fertility rates dipping to 1.9 kids per woman, Mexico's demographic boost is on a countdown. By 2030, the burgeoning pool of workers that's been fueling growth might just hit a wall, turning today's demographic dividend into tomorrow's growth gap. As Mexico strides towards becoming a developed nation, it's gonna need more than just a robust workforce. It needs to get smarter about how it uses its resources. Now let's chat about another snag in Mexico's path to peak productivity: education. Yeah, when it comes to schooling, Mexico's lagging behind most of the OECD crew. They're making strides, sure, but it's a slow climb. Now, boosting those education levels isn't just good for trivia night. It hones skills, sharpens tech use, and pumps up output, which means larger paychecks. And that could be really important. For Mexico, stepping up the school game could really take a bite out of some of the big old productivity problems, like the gaping chasm between the learning lucks of the city slickers and the slim pickings in rural spots. And there's a twist. Mexico's got a whopping chunk of its economy just chillin' in the shadows. The informal sector is massive, cranking out about 24% of the GDP and roping in 55% of the employment scene. And these jobs are off the radar. No taxes, no regs, and yup, no healthcare or pensions. This under-the-table biz means they can't snag loans easily, which puts a cap on growth and leaves government pockets lighter without those tax bucks. After the financial faceplant in the 90s, Mexico's money movers are still playing it safe. Loans to the folks and firms? It's just a dribble, especially when you stack it up against the flood in places like Chile, Brazil, and Korea. This credit crunch is a real drag on everything, from making stuff to cooking up new ideas. So what's next for Mexico on the road to being a big deal on the global stage? Well, just like we saw in our deep dive on Germany, leaning heavy on trade can be a double-edged sword. And with Uncle Sam snagging a whopping 80% of Mexico's exports, any shifts in this trade tango could send some serious ripples through Mexico's economy and job market. Now, spice things up with the 2024 elections looming in both Mexico and the USA, and you've got a recipe for some serious economic drama. The outcomes of these elections could redefine the relationship between these two powerhouses, impacting everything from trade policies to economic strategies. But let's not get too gloomy here. Mexico's got a geographical jackpot, snuggling up next to the world's largest economy. Unlike Germany, which is wrestling with the global shift away from China, Mexico's actually cashing in on this trend. De-globalization? More like a golden opportunity for Mexico to become a major player as companies shift their focus from Asia to closer shores. Trade and manufacturing are set to be the starring roles in Mexico's economic saga. Yet, unlike some European scenes we've watched, where aging populations strain under the weight of healthcare and pensions, Mexico's playing a different game. It boasts a youthful demographic that's not just growing but thriving. As more young folks enter the workforce, they're poised to drive Mexico's economic engine forward without the heavy baggage of welfare costs dragging them down. Looking ahead, the plot thickens with nearshoring becoming the next big blockbuster in the global market. As companies look to relocate their production closer to home, Mexico could see a windfall of investment and capital. Now, here's the real consideration, right? Whether Mexico can channel this influx into building a robust economic framework that not only fuels growth but also chips away at the long-standing issue of inequality. If they can do that, that'll be a big deal. but we'll have to wait to find out. Now, to wrap this up, Mexico's got a path lined with opportunities, with the next few years looking particularly promising. But like any good story, the challenge lies in the choices made along the way. Will Mexico seize the moment and leverage its assets to sculpt a thriving, equitable economy? Or is it going to miss the mark and let the potential slip through its grasp? Only time will tell, but one thing is for sure: Mexico's economic journey is one to watch. So if you're intrigued by our video on Mexico's happy days, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon as well, as you won't want to miss our next video where we'll be heading to the UK to see why the nation is in economic turmoil.